What's up, guys? Welcome to Straight from the Chest. My name is Justin Groth. Listen, I just want to welcome you to another episode, another installment, guys. For those of you who do not know, this is a personal development podcast, and I also want to thank you for your listening here. I want to thank you for giving me your time. Those of you who do, and as you know, if you've listened to me before, I'm very grateful for you, and that is something that is just something I'm going to illustrate every single time because I think it's very important to understand that if you're not affecting anybody, then what you're doing is essentially futile. And that goes with everything you do in life and anything you do in life. And like I said, this is a personal development podcast, but sometimes I think to develop yourself personally, you have to reveal the destructive. And we all have destructive elements. We all have destructive thoughts. We're all dysfunctional in a way. And I got to be honest, and now I think I've spoken about this before, but there are times that, being that I have this podcast, I always, it's very important to me, and it's imperative that I come with a message that derives some value and can invoke some value in your life, and you can apply it and become better as a byproduct. But I gotta be honest, I think back to who I am, the messenger behind it, and I just don't understand why I'm in the position that I'm in. I haven't had a tumultuous past. I've led a pretty cushy life by all regards. And I feel like for somebody who's giving a message that's supposed to inspire somebody to be better, you'd think I should have came from the trenches or just from the gutter, and I just don't. I haven't. That's not my background. I mean, I've had some trials in my life, yeah, but it's nothing that I feel gives me the qualifications to speak in the way that I speak. And that discourages me. And there's probably elements of you that feel that same way, then it discourages you because you feel like you're not qualified to do what you're doing, but for some reason, you have this visceral urgency to just continue doing it. And you discipline yourself around a specific routine or a specific goal, and you just keep facilitating because if you were to abdicate yourself from this particular discipline, you would be less of a productive version of who you are. And even though you can't understand where this thing's going, you can't understand who it's impacting, if it's impacting anybody, where you're going, what is going to come of this, you know that the alternative, and if you're honest with yourself and you deliver the question of, if I weren't doing this, if I weren't putting my time and energy into this, what would I be doing that would be equally or more productive than this particular thing? And I'm not going to write your story. I don't know what it is, so fill in the blank with whatever that thing is. For me, it's speaking. So that's why I have this podcast. And so the thing about it is, if you can honestly answer that question, I would be doing this that would be more productive or would be equally as productive, then you have a solution there, right? But I can almost assure you that whatever you have ambiguity over, or whatever you have fear over, or whatever you have an unknown element that is circumventing your thing, I can almost assure you that you cannot back that up with saying, I'll be doing this and this will be more productive or equally productive that, if you're being honest with yourself, you don't have an equally or more productive alternative. Even though what you're doing now, you're yielding no fruits from your labor. But for some reason, it's keeping you sane and it's giving you life. And it's giving you something to look forward to, even though you have fears and ambiguity incarcerated around that particular thing that you're doing. You know the alternative, if you're being honest, is far more less desirable than what you're doing now. And so when I speak or when I do these podcasts, I don't understand why I have so much anxiety, other than what I want to do is deliver a good message, and what I want to do is speak in a captivating sense that essentially allows you to be persuaded towards becoming a progressive, better version of yourself. I want to articulate well, but sometimes my brain doesn't work that well. And sometimes I'm just a dumbass when I'm talking. But then other times, I'm just well articulated and I can just, transfer between sentence to sentence and it flows well. But that's all part of being a human. You're not going to be the same version as you were yesterday. But the point is, you consistently stick to a particular narrative, even if you cannot understand where it's going, because it's feeding you life. It's feeding you meaning. It's feeding you an obligation. And that, as a human, is something that is so imperatively important that we adopt. Because if you don't have, you have no meaning. And if you have no meaning, you don't understand your existence. And if you don't understand your existence, what is the point of continuing on in life? And what's to stop you from becoming depressed and laying in bed for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years? What's stopping you? You need to have this element of ambiguity. You need to have this element of fear. You need to have this element of not understanding why you were chosen, not understanding why this particular homework is in front of you. You need to have that. You need to answer a different calling. You need to answer a calling. You need to answer a calling that's uncomfortable. You need to answer a calling that is doubtful, that is fearful. You just need to. You need to wrestle with that. And even though you can't understand why you're picked or qualified, because when I say picked, I mean you're essentially becoming let me word this right. You're being picked by your own visceral understanding, if that makes any sense. There's something that's calling you to this particular avenue. There's something that's giving you an impetus towards extracting this type of element from your being. There's something, and you don't understand what it is, but you know that the alternative would be far more destructive and actually what's the word? I can't even think of it. You would be far more I don't want to use the wrong word here. You just wouldn't be productive. And I don't feel like that's a path that any of us should go down. And I think that also, being that you have this thing that you're not so sure about, you have fears, or you have fears surrounding, it can open up the door to people's words contorting your vision or contorting your enthusiasm behind that particular path that you're going. And more often than not, you can get in these destructive negotiations with people, and they will tell you, look, man, just do this. It's going to be just the same, and you can do this, and you can have this, but yet it doesn't sit well with you, and it doesn't sit well with you for a reason. And that reason is because what that person is advocating and what they're trying to negotiate with you is not something that you've birthed. It's not something that is native to what you want and to what you feel viscerally. And if you're being genuine and honest with yourself, you have to just say no. And you have to say no to any and all negotiations when they come your way, because they will come your way. And even though that particular negotiation or the prize with that's tethered to that negotiation might seem better than what you got going right now, maybe because it's more gratifying, it's got an instant gratification tethered to it, or it just seems more exciting or attractive, but it still doesn't sit well with you. And because of that, you just can't adopt it. You can't foster that particular thing because it's not what is instantiated inside of you. And see, what's instantiated inside of you is something that you have an obligation to. That is the bare truth. You have an obligation to it. And if you abdicate yourself from that particular obligation, you'll never understand what you could be. It's okay to think you're disqualified. It's okay to think that, because you really are, but God's qualifying you. And that's the reason why He's calling you. And there are going to be people that are going to be praying over your ambiguity and your fear. And they're going to try to negotiate with you something that's less than. But you never go into that negotiation. You never even have it, because it's not something that should be on the table. Even though you can't understand where this thing is going or what's happening as a byproduct, you understand that the alternative is going to be empty in comparison. In fact, you can't even juxtapose those two elements. One is empty, one is fulfilling, but the fulfilling one isn't revealing itself yet in plain sight, but it shouldn't. Because every good thing takes so much time and so much attention and so much energy and so much discipline and so much tenacity and so much perseverance and so much grit. Every good thing does. Every good thing. But even with those good things, you're going to come into times where you have a bunch of setbacks and dysfunctions and trials coming against you. I mean, your life is just an infusion of seasons. And there are good seasons, there are bad seasons, and there are blessings, and there are takeaways. I mean, it's on and it's off. But even in the season that you're on, but you can't really place what's happening and why you're doing what you're doing. Your vision should never, ever be relinquished. And your belief should never, ever be relinquished. And even though you don't think you're qualified, it's because you're not. God qualified you though. And that's why you have those visceral urgencies to continue going, even when it doesn't make sense. Because something is going to manifest from this. Something is going to produce. It has to. And so far, if you look back in your life, and you look back at all the mistakes and the blunders you've made, somehow it worked out. And somehow you're here. You're in a new season. You have new problems, but you have new blessings too. God knows what he's doing. And that's good because you don't. Done.